Scene 2. The Governor's Ear. St. Augustine, East Florida. April 1777. They smelled the city before they saw it. Salt air and wood smoke, and beneath it, the particular smell of civilization, of animals penned close, of cooking fires and tallow candles, and the accumulated breathing of thousands of people living inside walls. Francisco stood at the edge of the King's Road, where it widened toward the northern gates, and breathed it in, and felt something loosen in his chest that had been knotted for 9 years. His feet were raw inside his boots. 3 days of walking, 2 nights sleeping in the open, and Antonio's ankle had swollen to the size of a fist. Juan had not spoken since the morning of the second day. They were 3 men who looked like men pulled from a ditch. Sun-blackened, hollow-eyed, their shirts dark with old sweat, their legs cut to ribbons by the sawgrass below the knee. The British sentry at the gate looked at them the way a man looks at something he cannot quite identify. "Pareo," Francisco said quietly to the others. "Stop." He straightened his back. He was 30 years old. He was a master carpenter who had framed and fitted and finished one of the largest plantation houses in East Florida with his own 2 hands. He was not a man who arrived anywhere on his knees. "We are from the New Smyrna colony," he said to the sentry. In the careful English he had been assembling word by word across 9 years, like a structure built without proper timber. "We have come to speak with Governor Tonyn." The sentry stared. "We have walked," Francisco added, as if this required clarification, "from Mosquito Inlet." "I not thought Enhoff in never our diem." St. Augustine was everything New Smyrna was not. Stone buildings, actual stone, coquina cut and fitted by hands older than Turnbull's ambition. The color of pale honey in the afternoon light. Streets that had names. A plaza with a well where women drew water without looking over their shoulders. And above everything, the massive, angular bulk of the Castillo de San Marcos, anchoring the northern end of the bay. 4 bastions, walls 14 feet thick, flying the British flag in the April wind with the indifferent authority of a thing that had outlasted everyone who had ever wanted to pull it down. Francisco walked through the city and tried not to stare. He had been 21 years old when he'd arrived in this country. He had seen St. Augustine for half a day from the deck of a ship before the fleet had sailed south to Mosquito Inlet. And then the colony had become the whole world. For 9 years, the world had been indigo rows and drainage canals, and the overseer's horse moving along the path between the fields, and the particular sound a man makes when he decides he is not going to cry out when he is struck. He had forgotten that the rest of the world was still here, going about its business. A British officer met them at the government house, a young man with a clean uniform and the expression of someone who had been told to deal with an inconvenience. He took one look at the 3 of them and then moved them to a side room where they would not be seen from the street. Francisco sat on a wooden bench and did not sleep, though his body screamed for it. He used the hours to think about what he knew of the man he was going to see. He had assembled it the way he assembled everything, piece by piece, over years, from fragments. Overseers talking when they thought no one who understood English was within earshot. Turnbull's own voice carrying from the plantation house on still nights. Visitors from St. Augustine who came to inspect the indigo operation and left with a particular expression that Francisco had learned to read. The look of men who had heard things they could not yet use. Patrick Tonyn had arrived as governor 3 years ago, in the spring of 1774. He was a military man, a soldier first, a politician second. And from everything Francisco had gathered, he had walked into East Florida and immediately disliked what he found. Not the colony itself, the man who ran it. The trouble between them was layered, the way all serious trouble between powerful men is layered. Part politics, part pride, part the specific resentment of a governor who discovers that another man in his province has been operating as though the governor does not exist. Turnbull was wealthy, well-connected in London, and had been secretary of the colony under the previous governor. He had built alliances, accumulated influence, and conducted himself, so the fragment suggested, as a man who considered the government of East Florida a secondary concern to the government of his own affairs. What Francisco knew most clearly was Wood's Tavern. Even at New Smyrna the story had arrived, carried south in pieces by supply carts and loose-tongued overseers. In the winter of 1776, with the American Revolution burning through the northern colonies, Turnbull had gathered 74 men at a tavern in St. Augustine and organized them to sign a document accusing Tonyn of mismanagement and dictatorial governance. He had then walked into Government House the next morning and presented it to the governor's face. Francisco had heard this story and filed it carefully. A man who would do that was not a man who feared confrontation, but a governor who received that document and did not break, who stood his ground, accused Turnbull of forming a faction in time of war, and drove him from the province, was not a man who forgot it either. Turnbull, he had heard, was in London now, had been since March. He had left in such haste that there were rumors of a bribed ship's captain. He had fled the colony he had built, the province he had tried to govern by other means, and the governor he had underestimated. And Francisco was sitting in Tonyn's government house with Turnbull's name in his mouth like a weapon, asking to be heard. He sat with that thought for a while. Then he leaned his head back against the coquina wall and listened to the city breathe around him and waited for morning. Governor Patrick Tonyn received them the following morning. He was not what Francisco had expected. Tonyn was a military man, Colonel Tonyn before the governorship, and he carried it in his posture, the squared shoulders, the flat assessment in his eyes. He was perhaps 50, with a long face and a wig that had seen better days, and the impatient energy of a man accustomed to making decisions that others then had to live with. He sat behind a heavy desk in a room lined with maps of the East Florida coast, and he looked at the three of them, cleaned up as best they could manage, Antonio's ankle wrapped in a borrowed cloth, and he said nothing for a long moment. Then, in a tone that gave away nothing, "You've come from New Smyrna." "Si, Your Excellency." Francisco had decided on the walk north, somewhere in the second day, that he would not be humble. Humility was for men who had something to lose. He had already lost everything that could be taken. "We have come to give testimony of what is done there, of what has been done for 9 years, to 600 people, in the name of Dr. Andrew Turnbull. An interpreter had been provided, a man named Pellicer, who spoke something close enough to the Minorcan dialect to be useful. But Francisco had spent 9 years learning English in the particular school of a man who had power over him, and he found he needed Pellicer less than he had expected. Tonyn's eyes moved briefly to the maps on the wall. A slight thing, a tell Francisco would not have caught if he had not spent 9 years learning to read the small movements of men with authority. The governor already knew something, perhaps not the details, but the broad shape of the thing he already knew. "Tell me," Tonyn said. Francisco told him. He had organized it in his mind over 70 miles, the way he organized a building. Start with the foundation, lay each course of stone flat and level before moving to the next. He began with the contracts, The promised 6 years that Turnbull had decided by his own private arithmetic did not begin until the plantation's debts were paid. Debts that would never be paid, that were designed never to be paid. He spoke of the men who had served their full term and gone to request discharge and come back beaten, irons on their legs, signed to additional years under duress. He spoke of the man who had tried to run and been caught and lashed 110 times on his naked back, then chained by the leg and locked in a room each night like an animal. He spoke of no pay, no clothing for years at a time. He spoke of the pregnant woman. He kept his voice level. He had practiced this too on the road. The voice of a man giving testimony, not the voice of a man drowning. "How many dead?" the governor asked at some point. "Of 1,400 who came in the ships," Francisco said. "More than half are in the ground." The room was quiet. Tonyn looked down at his desk. His fingers, Francisco noticed, were pressed flat against the wood, the posture of a man keeping something contained. "Dr. Turnbull," the governor said carefully, "is presently in England." "I know it. When he returns, he will contest everything you have told me. He has powerful friends. He will bring lawyers, and he will bring letters from London, and he will call you liars and vagabonds and men who broke their lawful contracts." Francisco met his eyes. "Then let him contest it in a court of law, before a justice, under oath." He paused. "We will also come under oath." Something shifted in Tonyn's expression. A minute thing, quickly controlled. But it was there. "If you testify," the governor said, "I will protect you. I give you my word as the governor of this colony." He leaned forward slightly. "But I need more than 3 voices. I need the others who were there. I need names, signed depositions. I need it all before me in writing, lawful and formal, so that there is no document on this earth that can undo it." Francisco nodded. "Give me a month," he said, "and I will bring you 600. He walked out of Government House into the St. Augustine morning. The smell of the bay on the air, pelicans turning above the Castillo's walls, the city going about the ordinary business of being alive. He found a low wall near the plaza and sat, and for a long moment he simply breathed. Then he put his face in his carpenter's hands, those hands that had built the house of the man who had stolen 9 years of his life. And he allowed himself, just briefly, the thing he had not permitted on the road. When he stood again, his eyes were dry. He had work to do.